Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, General, for being here. I also want to recognize that your Command Sergeant Major is here, Sergeant Major Thedford. Thank you for all of your years of work as well on behalf of our nation. General, I want to go back to you. There's a theme that you've talked about a lot in terms of relationship building and setting the groundwork with our partners beforehand in the region and the like. And you and I touched a little bit on some of the programs that exist that allow us to do that, to build these habitual relationships. I know that the ranking member talked about IMET programs. I'd like to touch on the State Partnership for Peace programs. This is a program where when I was serving, from the time I was a second lieutenant, I had a partner nation, in Illinois' case, Poland, that we trained and worked with. And so I grew up in the military along with my Polish counterpart from being young second lieutenants all the way up through our command time. And that developed a relationship and an understanding of how that worked. Can you speak a little bit about the different types of U.S.-funded military exchange programs that you see implemented in the CENTCOM region, and talk about the values of those programs to contributing to our warfighting capabilities?
Thank you. And Senator, let me just start and talk about the State Partnership Program. This is an excellent program. We have 4 or 5 states that are partnered with countries across our region, and in almost every case, these are deeply valued programs by our partners in the region, and I believe by the states that orchestrate them. We get a lot of benefit out of that, not just in the countries in the region, but by people from those countries coming back to America to participate in exercises, to build the relationships back here. And I think this is an extraordinary program. It's long-term, it's enduring, and I think it serves us particularly well. You've already talked about the impact of IMET. This is an extraordinarily important program. I won't belabor that. I also think that the program of exercises that we continue to orchestrate across the region are extraordinarily important in terms of building interoperability, in terms of building readiness, and in terms of building reliability in our partners. And as we have kind of continued to move forward, I think this will be continuing investments that we'll want to make. For example, with Egypt, we have restarted the Bright Star exercise, but we've changed it more to deal with the contemporary threats that we are dealing with and that Egypt is dealing with in the terrorism realm, as opposed to perhaps the sweeping tank battles of the past. That's not what we're doing. So I think through our exercise programs, we have the ability to make these very specific to the needs of the region and address it. I would add one final program that I think is extraordinarily valuable, and it is our combined maritime force, where we invite different partners in the region, some from outside of the region, to come in and participate as part of our combined maritime forces operating in the Gulf and in the waters of the region. These are extraordinarily important. And we see countries like Pakistan who step forward, provide significant resources in this, and provide leadership to these organizations. And this allows us to make sure that we share the burden, we leverage the capabilities that everybody brings, and it adds to a much more collective approach to security in the region. So those are just 4 key programs of probably several others that could be discussed as well.
Thank you, General. That last point speaks a little bit to my logistical officer heart. When I look at a map of the CENTCOM region, I can't help but wonder how your J4 is able to transport people, equipment, and supplies throughout the theater, especially in light of great power competition and the changing environment as it is. It becomes even more salient when I think about the potential for Iranians to close the Strait of Hormuz and restrict movement in the Arabian Gulf. Going back to the exercises that you just mentioned, do you regularly exercise against this threat, and how confident are you that our logistical supply chain will not be gravely impacted should conflict with the Iranians escalate in the region?
Well, certainly we do. I mean, one of the principal concerns we have is the mining of the straits and the impact that would have. And so we do regularly exercise, mining exercises, counter mining exercises in the maritime environment here. We have a big exercise planned later this fall with a number of different countries that will come in. But this is certainly something that we are focused on. You are really hitting on the resiliency of our logistics networks in the region, and I do think that our command, our components out there, and our partners have really begun to address this. Certainly, you're familiar with the Northern Distribution Network that kind of goes up through the Central Asian states. That has been important for us. We continue to exercise that. It certainly does have some influence from Russia in that. It is a more difficult network to orchestrate, but it is not impossible. And we do continue to move materials across that area. Across the Arabian Peninsula, we have what we refer to as the Trans-Arabian Network that links a variety of ports and cities and airports, not only in the Arabian Gulf, but down in the Gulf of Oman and over to the Red Sea. That gives us extreme resiliency in terms of how we can move material, men, forces into the region to respond to capability. So we're very much focused on that. And in fact, as we look at implementing the National Defense Strategy and what that might mean for CENTCOM, our focus on these logistic networks and our ability to have agreements, basing, and other things in here, I think even become more important than they already have. And we have tried to prioritize that, and we will continue to do that as we move forward.
Thank you. Vitally important indeed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.